Knull was an ancient, malevolent deity who purportedly ruled over the abyss, the existential chasm that existed between the destruction of the sixth cosmos and the creation of the seventh cosmos. While Knull drew his power from and claimed to be the incarnation of the primordial darkness, it existed long before even him. Originally content to slumber in the void, Knull was awakened when the Celestials began creating the universe. The Celestials recruited Knull to be the King in Black, a cosmic caretaker for the new universe. However, Knull rejected the King in Black's responsibilities and lashed out. Outraged that his kingdom of darkness was being despoiled, Knull created a sword of living darkness from his newly cast shadow and decapitated one of them. Cast back into the void by the other Celestials, Knull used the slain Celestial's severed head as a forge to temper his sword in its cosmic energies, thus forging All Black the Necrosword. Intent on reclaiming his kingdom of darkness, Knull manifested a symbiotic suit of armor from the eldritch darkness he commanded and embarked on a genocidal campaign against the other gods and life itself, becoming a legendary figure of terror for divine beings even billions of years later. Hellbent on returning the cosmos to the abyss, Knull created an artificial planet from the living darkness he controlled to serve as his throne world and base of operations. Experimenting with his ability to manifest life out of darkness itself, Knull began using the exoteric latitude as a dumping ground for his failed creations, which millennia later became known as the Excellent. Among his early creations were proto-symbiotes such as Mr. E, and presumably the other Shadow Realm entities like Shadow Man and Ka, as well as a horde of wyvern-like monsters. Establishing himself as the divine nexus of the abyssal entity's hive mind, Knull sent them forth into the cosmos, using them to conquer countless planets, devour civilizations and pantheons, extinguish stars, and smother entire planets in eldritch darkness. The few gods that Knull spared were forcibly drafted into his army, enslaved to his will and transformed into monsters using the living abyss, placed as sentries to guard the worlds he'd conquered. At some point during Knull's war against the light, he encountered the time-displaced Silver Surfer when the former Herald of Galactus freed a world from Knull's control using the power cosmic. After a brief but intense fight, Knull defeated the Silver Surfer and infected him with living abyss to turn him into the Void Knight. However, the Silver Surfer was freed by Ego the Living Planet, who helped Rad escape when Knull pursued him on a symbiote dragon. Knull hunted the Silver Surfer down and dueled him, intent on reclaiming him for his army. Knull nearly succeeded in doing so, but was defeated when the Silver Surfer expended the last of his power cosmic to conjure a star right in front of him, bathing him in stellar plasma and blasting him across the cosmos. This defeat proved temporary, as Knull recovered and resumed his conquest of the cosmos. At some point afterward, Knull engaged an army of gold-armored gods empowered by the light in combat and slaughtered all but one of them. Pursuing the survivor, Knull managed to impale him on All Black, but was himself impaled through the head by the enemy god's spear. Knull and the dying god crash-landed on a desolate planet, where All Black left the incapacitated Knull for one of the indigenous inhabitants, Gore. Despite this setback, Knull chose to not hunt the thief down and reclaim All Black, though he remained aware of Gore unwittingly following in his footsteps as the God Butcher. After recovering from his injuries over the course of a century, Knull began experimenting with his powers and discovered that he could manifest amorphous parasites called symbiotes from the living abyss and bond them to lesser life forms, corrupting life rather than eradicating it. Knull's reign of terror came to an end in the 6th century CE, when two symbiote dragons, one black and one red, arrived on Earth and were named the Grendel and Grendel's mother by the Danes. The Grendel's rampage was stopped by Thor, who blasted it with divine lightning and severed Knull's connection to the vast majority of symbiotes. As the symbiotes bonded to benevolent hosts, the hive mind became tainted with notions of honor and nobility, leading to them rebelling against their god and imprisoning him at the heart of the throne world, which they renamed Clintar, their word for cage. Forming an organization known as the Agents of the Cosmos, the symbiotes of Clintar subsequently attempted to expunge their dark origins and redeem themselves by acting to protect the cosmos they'd once terrorized. While serving as a herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer came across Clintar and was devoured by it, its constituent symbiotes attempting to imprison him alongside Knull at the artificial planet's core. However, the Surfer was able to free himself and escape. Centuries later, the Grendel symbiote dragon was unearthed by S.H.I.E.L.D., and its living abyss was used to create a super soldier initiative called the Sim Soldier program. Using the psychic link between himself and the Grendel, Knull began attempting to assert his influence over its offshoots, causing them to rampage and driving their hosts insane. Decades later, Knull remote-piloted the symbiote dragon and broke it free of containment, reabsorbing 4 of its 5 offshoots. Knull sent the Grendel symbiote dragon on a rampage through downtown Manhattan, but it was stopped by the combined efforts of Venom, whose symbiote had been adversely affected by Knull's awakening, and Spider-Man. Using the Grendel to manifest an avatar of his true form, Knull stripped the Venom symbiote from its host and attempted to purge it of the benevolence and compassion it had obtained during its time on Earth, intending to reconnect it to his hive mind and absorb it into the Grendel symbiote to become stronger. When confronted by Eddie Brock, Knull showed him the true origins and history of the symbiotes, mocking him for believing the lies told to the Venom symbiote by the symbiotes and agents of the cosmos. Reforming the Grendel around his avatar, Eddie, and Spider-Man, Knull flew into space and revealed his plan to obtain the missing pieces of the symbiote dragon, use it to free his true body from Clintar, and resume his conquest of the universe, starting with Earth. Venom escaped with help from Spider-Man, but Knull chose not to pursue them and instead began hunting for the Tyrannosaurus symbiote, one of the remaining pieces of the Grendel symbiote dragon. When the Tyrannosaurus symbiote bonded to Venom and reconnected to the hive mind, Knull attacked using the Grendel symbiote and attempted to devour Venom. When the Grendel was destabilized by sonic grenades, Knull's manifestation engaged Venom in a brutal one-on-one battle, Venom's arsenal of high-tech weapons proving ineffective. Knull stripped Eddie of both symbiotes and began absorbing them, but his gloating was cut short when Eddie detonated the entire arsenal, the blast affecting Knull's real body at the core of Clintar. Shaken and enraged, Knull coated his manifestation in the Grendel symbiote. But before he could attack, the Tyrannosaurus symbiote coiled around his avatar and dragged it into the heart of a blast furnace, telling Venom to hold the door shut. Knull's avatar was subsequently immolated, his connection to the Grendel symbiote seemingly severed and his body remaining sealed at the heart of Clintar. A few months after the battle, an Earth-based cult dedicated to worshipping Knull, led by Scorn, obtained a sample of the Grendel symbiote and Cletus Kasadi's corpse, intending to turn him into Knull's avatar and facilitate his awakening. When the sample of Grendel's symbiote was bonded to Cletus, Knull reanimated and psychically communicated with the serial killer, though the nature of their conversation is unknown. When Knull attempted to seize control of Cletus through the symbiote, Cletus resisted Knull's control and their connection was severed when the Grendel symbiote absorbed the codex, trace remnants of living abyss left in former symbiote hosts, that the Carnage symbiote had left in Scorn's body. Cletus desired to communicate with Knull again and decided to help free him by collecting enough codices to reconnect the Grendel symbiote to the hive mind. As his connection to his self-proclaimed apostle grew stronger, Knull began awakening and exerting his influence to corrupt both the symbiotes of Clintar and those stranded on Earth, namely the Riot, Agony, Phage, Lasher, and Scream symbiotes. After Dark Carnage was killed by Venom, who absorbed the Dark Carnage symbiote and remaining codices, Knull was reawakened and promptly destroyed Clintar, coalescing its constituent symbiotes into a fleet of symbiote dragons. Manifesting his suit of draconic armor, Knull was confronted by Zakdel, an excellent infected Kree. Initially bemused by Zakdel accusing him of stealing his soul, Knull revealed the true origin of the Excellent as imperfect symbiotes and stripped Zakdel of his, absorbing it into his armor before manifesting All Black's Necrosword form anew. Leaving Zakdel for dead, Knull resumed his conquest of the cosmos, unknowingly hunted by his opposite, the God of Light. Using his living abyss to smother entire planets, Knull also began communing with Eddie's son Dylan Brock, a human symbiote hybrid spawned by the Venom symbiote, by appearing in his nightmares. Blazing a swath of destruction across the Kree/Skrull Alliance's colonial territories en route to Earth, Knull laid traps to waylay ships sent to investigate, thereby claiming several prominent warriors from both species for his army. Intent on settling his eons-old grudge against the Celestials, Knull hunted them down and infected them with living abyss. Knull also sent symbiotes and symbiote dragons to blaze a swath of destruction across numerous other spacefaring civilizations such as the ZNRX. Arriving at Earth, Knull and his horde easily plowed through the minefield of derelict Kree and Skrull ships left over from the war against the Katahdin. As his dragons rained down on the Earth and quickly overwhelmed the planet's superheroes, Knull emerged from one of the Celestials and declared his intent to destroy the planet, offering to make it quick and painless if given the human called Brock. Knull was attacked by the Sentry, who attempted to fly him into orbit and rip him in half, but easily broke free and reversed their positions. Knull tore the Sentry apart and seized control of the dark entity that had been indwelling him, absorbing it into himself. Growing bored of the conflict, Knull used symbiotes to seize control of the Avengers, X-Men, and many of the other heroes that had rallied to oppose him before encasing the Earth in a shell of living abyss. Out of desperation, Venom offered to serve Knull if Earth was spared, but Knull refused, remarking that the Brock he was interested in was Dylan, and ripped the Venom symbiote off Eddie before throwing him from the top of the Empire State Building. Satisfied that Eddie could no longer prove a pest to his plans once he succumbed to his wounds and his consciousness was trapped within the hive mind as a codex. Constructing a spire at the tip of the Empire State Building, Knull began directing his invasion on multiple fronts by remote piloting symbiote dragons, indwelling symbiote-possessed heroes, and manifesting avatars. Knull attempted to claim the Ebony Blade, Sword of Fu-Shi, and Ghost Spider's artificial symbiote for himself, but was thwarted and repeatedly taken aback by the number of heroes who possessed powers and weapons able to kill his dragons and damage, if not outright destroy, his avatars, as well as the willpower to partially resist his control. Reaching backwards through time, Knull resurrected Mr. E and sent him to either destroy the Ebony Blade in the past or use it to facilitate his premature escape from Clintar, though Mr. E repeatedly failed to do so and was ultimately destroyed. Knull was stripped of a large amount of his power by the Valkyries, who severed his unwitting connection to the headless Celestial from the afterlife. When Dylan Brock entered the battlefield and began using his powers to free the people and heroes Knull had enslaved, Knull attempted to capture him but was attacked by Thor, who he recognized as the one who had almost killed the Grendel centuries prior. Furious, Knull confronted the God of Thunder, who was unimpressed and dismissed him as merely one of hundreds of gods of destruction he had vanquished. Knull overpowered Thor, but was attacked by Dylan. Casually subduing the boy and cocooning him in Living Abyss, Knull was distracted long enough for Thor to knock him off and rip his lower jaw off with a full power blow from Mjolnir. Enraged, Knull activated the symbiote-controlled Celestials and ordered them to raise the planet. Before Thor could leave to confront them, Knull, forming a new lower jaw from Living Abyss, manifested All Black from his symbiote armor and impaled him from behind, sneering that he could sense Thor was already acquainted with the Necrosword and that he was its creator. Leaving Thor impaled, Knull turned to confront Dylan and voiced his intent to claim the boy as his son, commanding the symbiotes he controlled within the hive mind to imprison the symbiotes that Dylan and Thor had purged his influence from. Unbeknownst to Knull, Eddie Brock was reunited with the codices of Flash Thompson and the Anti-Venom symbiote and Rex Strickland and the Tyrannosaurus symbiote. They were able to take advantage of Dylan and Thor injuring Knull to infiltrate the core of the hive mind, the God Hive. When Agent Anti-Venom's codex bonded to one of the symbiotes that Knull couldn't control and was reborn into the world of the living as a white symbiote dragon, Knull immediately realized what was going on and furiously hijacked the Tyrannosaurus symbiote, confronting Eddie again with the intent of killing him once and for all. However, Eddie managed to escape the hive mind with help from the Venom symbiote and was chosen as the God of Light's new host.